Maya Chen's studio apartment looked like someone had tried to pack the entire Pacific Ocean into 400 square feet. Holographic projections of coral reefs flickered across 3 walls, their bioluminescent glow casting blue-green shadows over stacks of research tablets and sample containers. The 4th wall was actual glass, overlooking the San Francisco docks where autonomous cargo ships glided silently through the pre-dawn fog. She woke to her neural implant's gentle pulse, the cheap consumer model everyone got free with their government ID, not the premium versions her family wore that could access private networks and real-time stock data. Her notification feed scrolled across her vision, 17 messages in the Chen family group chat. All posted in the last hour. Derek had sent a location pin to his new estate in Tahoe, followed by a fully rendered 3D tour that her implant could barely process without lagging. Can't wait to host Christmas in a real home this year, his message read, accompanied by a neural signature that broadcasted his emotional state as smug satisfaction. The message was tagged with #blessed #ChenFamilyLegacy and had already accumulated 43 reactions from extended family members. Vanessa, Derek's wife, had added her own message, formal attire required for dinner. We'll be doing the traditional pavilion walk after. The light display is AR enhanced this year, make sure your implants are updated. 3 sparkle emojis. Her neural signature radiated excitement with an undercurrent of superiority. Maya dismissed the notifications and sat up. Her apartment's climate control was malfunctioning again, leaving a thin layer of frost on the inside of her window. She'd been meaning to fix it for 3 months but kept diverting her paycheck to the Reef Recovery Initiative instead. The irony wasn't lost on her. She spent her days restoring coral ecosystems that regulated Earth's temperature while she couldn't regulate her own apartment's heat. She moved to her workstation, where physical photographs were pinned to a corkboard, an affectation her colleagues found charmingly retro. Most people stored everything in cloud memory now, accessible through their implants. But Maya liked the tangibility of printed images. The way they didn't disappear when servers went down or subscriptions expired. The photos showed her life's work, before and after shots of coral reefs she'd helped restore. Bleached white skeletons transformed into living rainbows. She'd taken these herself during dives, using old-fashioned cameras because she liked the grain, the imperfection, the proof that a human had been there to witness the resurrection. Christmas gifts for her family lay half-wrapped on her kitchen counter. She'd made them herself, photo books of restored reefs for her parents, printed on recycled substrate. Homemade reef-safe sunscreen for the cousins, mixed from natural ingredients in her lab. The gifts looked pathetic next to the designer items her family would exchange, their authenticity verified by blockchain and their status boosted by brand partnerships with luxury corporations. Her implant pinged again. A private message from her mother, Patricia. Maya, please tell me you're bringing someone this year. Derek's business partner will be there. Very successful. I've already sent you his profile. Before Maya could dismiss it, a full dossier appeared in her vision. James Way, 34, corporate attorney, net worth in the high 8 figures, relationship status single, compatibility score with Maya calculated at 72% based on some algorithm she'd never trusted. His profile picture showed a man in an expensive suit with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. She closed the dossier without reading further. Her mother had been trying to set her up with successful men for 5 years now, ever since Maya had chosen marine biology over the family real estate business. Each potential match was more accomplished than the last, as if Patricia believed Maya's career choice was a phase that could be corrected by proximity to wealth. Maya pulled out her one-bid dress from the closet, a simple navy number she'd bought in 2022, before clothing had become smart fabric that changed color based on your mood or social ranking. In her family circles, wearing static clothing was like showing up in rags. But it was all she had, and frankly, all she cared to have. the dress worked fine. It didn't need to broadcast her emotional state to everyone in the room. She packed her overnight bag with the efficiency of someone who'd learned to travel light. One change of clothes, toiletries, her research tablet. The tablet was her lifeline. It contained 5 years of data on coral restoration techniques, grant proposals in various stages, and correspondence with the mysterious benefactor who'd been funding her work for the past 3 months. The benefactor called herself Mrs. L. Chen, claimed to be a distant relative in Malaysia, and had appeared out of nowhere with a substantial donation to Maya's research. The money had allowed Maya to expand her restoration sites, hire 2 assistants, and actually pay rent on time for once. She'd tried to verify Mrs. Chen's identity through the family's genealogy database, but the woman's profile was locked behind privacy walls Maya couldn't penetrate. Her implant buzzed with another message, this one from her father: "Don't forget to talk to Derek about investment opportunities. He might have some advice for your project." Maya's jaw tightened. Her project. That's what they called it. 5 years of doctoral research, 3 peer-reviewed publications, and documented success restoring over 200 hectares of coral reef, all reduced to a little project that needed investment advice from her crypto-gambling cousin. She grabbed her keys, actual physical keys, because her 15-year-old Honda Civic predated the smart lock revolution, and headed out. The drive to Tahoe would take 3 hours in holiday traffic. 3 hours to mentally prepare for the annual ritual of being reminded why she'd chosen to disappoint her family. The highways were crowded with autonomous vehicles moving in perfect synchronized formations, their passengers visible through transparent panels, most of them interfaced with their neural implants, eyes glazed as they consumed content or conducted business in virtual space. Maya drove manually, her hands on the wheel, her attention on the road. Another affectation that marked her as behind the times. She arrived at Derek's estate as the sun was setting, painting the snow-covered mountains in shades of orange and pink that no holographic display could properly replicate. The house itself was a monument to excess, all glass and steel and aggressive angles, perched on the mountainside like a spaceship that had decided to land and stay. The driveway was lined with vehicles that cost more than most people's houses: Teslas with full autonomous capability, Mercedes with quantum battery systems, a Range Rover that probably had better computing power than her apartment. Her Civic looked like a refugee from a museum as she pulled into the last parking spot. A valet approached, his uniform embedded with smart fabric that displayed the Chen family crest on his chest. He looked at her car with barely concealed confusion, probably trying to figure out how to interface with a vehicle that had actual keys. "I'll park it myself," Maya said, saving him the trouble. Inside, the house was a demonstration of wealth so aggressive it bordered on hostile. Every surface seemed designed to announce its cost. The chandelier in the entry hall had a small holographic placard floating beneath it: Murano glass, commission piece, $40,000. The marble floors had similar tags: Carrara marble, $200 per square foot, imported from Italy. It was like walking through a museum where everything was for sale and you were constantly reminded you couldn't afford any of it. Her mother materialized from the living room, her neural implant social overlay painting a glowing aura around her that indicated her current emotional state: pleased but anxious. Patricia Chen wore a dress that shifted colors subtly as she moved, the smart fabric responding to her body temperature and heart rate, creating an effect that was both beautiful and unsettling. "Maya, darling. You're here." Patricia's smile was tight as she took in Maya's static navy dress and lack of visible status indicators. "Did you drive yourself?" "I always drive myself, Mom." Patricia reached out to adjust Maya's collar, her rings broadcasting their authentication certificates as they caught the light, each one a verified piece from a luxury brand. Their provenance tracked on the blockchain. "Try to make an effort tonight, will you? Derek's business partner is coming. I sent you his profile." "I saw it," and he's very accomplished. Single. You two would have a lot to talk about, Maya doubted that. In her experience, men at her family's gatherings wanted to talk about two things: their accomplishments and her lack thereof. The conversation usually ended with unsolicited advice about pivoting to something more profitable, as if the ocean's collapse was a problem that could be solved by better personal branding. Her father appeared, his own implant casting a silver glow that indicated he was simultaneously present in the room and attending to business elsewhere, a common split attention state among executives. Richard Chen could never fully commit to one space. He was always half in a meeting, half in a negotiation, half present with his family. Maya. Good. You're here. He pulled his attention fully into the room, the silver glow fading. Derek just closed another deal. Big one. You should talk to him. He might have some investment advice for your little project. There it was again. Her little project. Dad, I don't need investment advice. I need people to stop treating the ocean like a resource to exploit. Richard's smile was patient, the way you'd smile at a child who didn't understand how the world worked. That's exactly the kind of thinking that's keeping you in that apartment, sweetheart. Everything is a resource. It's just about managing it correctly. Before Maya could respond, there was movement on the grand staircase. Derek descended like a man who'd choreographed his entrance, Vanessa on his arm. They were both wearing smart clothing that responded to their movements with subtle light effects, giving them an almost ethereal glow. Derek was 32 but had the groomed, polished look of someone who'd discovered that appearance was currency and had invested heavily in his presentation. Maya. You made it. Derek's hug was performative, designed for the room rather than for her. His neural signature broadcasted warmth that his eyes didn't match. Love the dress. Very retro. Is that vintage HM, Nordstrom? 2022. Vanessa's air kiss missed Maya's cheek by calculated centimeters, close enough to be polite, far enough to avoid actual contact. Her smart fabric dress was displaying a pattern of cherry blossoms that bloomed and faded in rhythm with her heartbeat. Derek, don't be rude. I'm sure it's a conscious choice. Sustainability is very in right now. She turned to Maya, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Thrifting? No. Just not replacing things that work fine. Oh. Vanessa's dress shifted to a cooler color palette, her disappointment literally visible. Well, you wear it well. The formal dinner was a carefully orchestrated performance. The table had been set with holographic place cards that displayed each guest's name along with their social metrics, net worth, professional achievements, relationship status. Maya's card showed her credentials as a marine biologist and her modest publication record. Next to Derek's card, which listed his crypto portfolio value and recent investments, hers looked like a participation trophy. She was seated between her Uncle Thomas, Derek's father, and an empty chair reserved for the late-arriving business partner. The chair had James Way's profile hovering above it, his accomplishments scrolling in a slow loop. Derek held court at the head of the table, discussing his recent ventures with the confidence of someone who'd never had to question whether he deserved to be heard. His neural implant was projecting data visualizations into the air above the table, graphs of his portfolio performance, projections of future gains, animations of properties he was considering purchasing. The key is diversification, he was saying. You can't put all your assets in one place. I've got crypto, real estate, some ventures in space mining futures. You've got to spend money to make money. That's just the abundance mindset. Vanessa added her own commentary about their upcoming feature in Luxury Living magazine, not the print version, the full neural immersive edition where readers could experience their lifestyle firsthand through recorded memories. They're going to do a whole segment on our art collection. We've got pieces from the Mars colony artists, you know, the ones who sculpt in low gravity. Each piece is authenticated on the blockchain. It's very exclusive. Uncle Thomas turned to Maya with the expression of someone about to ask a question they already believed they knew the answer to. Still working with the fish, Maya? When are you going to get a real job? The table's attention shifted to her. She felt the weight of their collective judgment, could almost see the social metrics calculating in their implants, comparing her net worth to theirs, her achievements to Derek's, her potential to their expectations. I'm a marine biologist, Uncle Thomas. I restore coral reef ecosystems, yes, but what's the ROI on that? Derek interjected, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd made reducing everything to numbers into a religion. I respect passion projects, believe me. But at some point, you need to think about wealth building. What's your 5-year financial projection? Your exit strategy? Jennifer, Maya's younger cousin, chimed in from across the table. Her implant was displaying her social media follower count above her head, 247,000 people following her lifestyle content. I read that marine biologists make like $50,000 a year. That's so sad. You could make that in brand partnerships alone if you pivoted to content creation. Patricia tried to help but made it worse. She's very dedicated. She donates most of her salary to conservation efforts. It's very noble. Derek raised his wine glass, its rim embedded with sensors that analyzed the vintage and displayed tasting notes in the air. To Maya, the family's Mother Teresa. We should all be so selfless. His neural signature broadcasted amusement with an edge of condescension. The toast was a performance of generosity that was actually a reminder of hierarchy. Maya gripped her own glass, regular glass, no sensors, and smiled tightly. She'd learned years ago that arguing with Derek was pointless. He operated in a world where success was measured in numbers that increased, and nothing she said would translate into a language he could understand. After dinner, Vanessa orchestrated a gift exchange with the enthusiasm of someone who'd turned generosity into a competitive sport. She'd prepared elaborate gifts for everyone, each one presented with a holographic display showing the item's authentication certificate, brand partnership endorsement, and social media value. Gucci wallets with quantum-encrypted security features. Tiffany jewelry that changed color based on the wearer's mood. Hermes scarves woven with smart fabric that could display custom patterns. Each gift came with commentary about how everyone deserved luxury, how treating yourself was important, how visible success mattered. When it was Maya's turn, Vanessa presented her with a small Prada bag, entry-level by Prada standards but still worth more than Maya's monthly rent. Now, this is from their accessible line. I know the main collection might be outside your budget right now. But everyone needs to start somewhere. Think of it as your gateway to better things. She laughed, a sound that was recorded and probably already being edited for her lifestyle content. Maya opened her mouth to respond when the doorbell chimed, not an actual bell, but a neural notification that rippled through everyone's implants simultaneously. Derek jumped up with barely contained excitement. That'll be James. Everyone, this is the partner I've been telling you about. The door opened to reveal James Way, and Maya's first thought was that his profile picture had been a lie. Not because he looked different, but because photographs couldn't capture the way he moved, with a kind of careful precision that suggested he was aware of taking up space and was apologizing for it even as he entered. He wore a Tom Ford suit that probably cost more than her car, but he wore it like armor. Not ornamentation. His neural implant was one of the premium models, its subtle glow indicating he was running multiple background processes, but his attention seemed fully present. His eyes scanned the room with an efficiency that suggested he was cataloging and analyzing, a lawyer's habit of assessing situations before committing to them. Sorry I'm late. Traffic from the city was murder. His voice was warm but controlled, the kind of voice that had been trained to negotiate and persuade. Derek made introductions around the room, his hand on James's shoulder possessive and proud. When they reached Maya, Derek's tone shifted slightly. "And this is my cousin Maya. She works with fish." The dismissal in his voice was subtle but clear. Maya had been reduced to 3 words, her 5 years of research and documented success compressed into a phrase designed to diminish. James extended his hand, and when Maya took it, she felt the subtle vibration of his premium neural implant interfacing with her basic model, a handshake that occurred on 2 levels, physical and digital. His grip was firm, his hand warm, and he held on just a moment longer than necessary. "Fish?" His eyebrow raised slightly, a gesture that seemed genuinely curious rather than condescending. "Coral restoration, actually. I'm a marine biologist." Something shifted in his expression. He pulled out the chair next to her, ignoring Derek's attempt to steer him toward Vanessa's friend Stephanie, and sat down with the kind of focus that suggested he'd just made a decision about where his attention belonged. "That's fascinating. Are you working on the acidification problem?" "I read a paper recently about calcium carbonate saturation levels and their impact on reef formation." Maya's surprise must have shown on her face because James smiled, a real smile this time, not the practiced one from his profile. "You read marine biology papers?" "I read everything." "Hazard of insomnia." He adjusted his position, angling his body toward her in a way that subtly excluded the rest of the table from their conversation. "Though I'll admit I understood maybe 40% of that one. Something about aragonite saturation states and pH thresholds." For the next 30 minutes, Maya forgot about her family. About Derek's condescension, about the designer bag she didn't want. James asked questions that demonstrated actual comprehension, not just polite interest. When she explained her restoration techniques, he followed up with inquiries about scalability and funding models. When she mentioned the challenges of warming ocean temperatures, he referenced recent climate data she hadn't expected a lawyer to know. She watched his face as she described a recent success, a section of reef that had been 90% dead but was now showing signs of recovery. His expression shifted, something softening around his eyes. "You get this look," he said quietly, "when you talk about the coral coming back. Like you're sharing a secret." Heat rose in Maya's cheeks. She was suddenly aware of how close they were sitting, how his attention felt like a physical thing. "It's the best feeling in the world. Watching something you thought was lost bloom again. I imagine that takes patience. And faith, and stubbornness." She smiled. "My family thinks I'm crazy." James glanced around the table, taking in her family's expensive clothes and neural overlays and visible status indicators. When he looked back at her, his expression was certain. "Your family is wrong." The way he said it, simple, declarative, allowing no room for argument, made something in Maya's chest tighten. Across the room, Vanessa was watching them. She leaned close to Derek, whispering something urgent. Derek's neural signature shifted to irritation, a red tinge appearing in his projected aura. He stood abruptly, his glass chiming against the table with enough force to draw everyone's attention. "Everyone. I almost forgot, we have a Chin family tradition. Every Christmas Eve, we take a walk to the garden pavilion to see the light display. The AR enhancement this year is incredible. Bundle up. It's -10 out there." The family began moving toward the coat room, their neural implants pinging each other with messages and reactions. Derek moved to James's side, his hand on James's shoulder again, possessive. "James, I need to talk to you about the Henderson contract." "Give me 10 minutes in the study?" James hesitated, his eyes finding Maya's across the room. There was a question in his expression, something that looked almost like reluctance. "Can it wait until, it's urgent?" You know how Henderson is about deadlines. As James allowed himself to be pulled away, Maya joined her family at the coat room. Her jacket, a standard thermal coat, nothing smart about it, looked thin compared to the others. Vanessa's coat could adjust its temperature automatically. Derek's had integrated heating elements that glowed softly through the fabric. Vanessa noticed, her neural signature broadcasting satisfaction. "Oh Maya, you're going to freeze. Don't you have something warmer? This is all I brought." "Well, you'll just have to tough it out. Maybe it'll be a short walk." Vanessa's smile was cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. The family walked through the snow to the garden pavilion, their breath visible in the cold air. The structure was beautiful, glass and steel and elegant curves, lit from within by thousands of lights that responded to their neural implants, creating personalized displays. Through Maya's basic implant, she could see simple colors and patterns. Through her family's premium models, she knew they were seeing immersive augmented reality scenes, probably complete with music and interactive elements. Derek made a show of looking around, his expression shifting to carefully crafted concern. "Damn, I forgot the champagne. We can't toast without it." He turned to Maya, his smile calculated. "Maya, would you mind running back to grab the bottles? They're in the wine cellar. Take the side entrance, it's much faster." "Here, I'll show you." Maya was cold enough that the promise of movement sounded appealing. She followed Derek to a heavy oak door on the side of the pavilion. "Half hidden behind decorative stonework, just through here, down the stairs. You'll see the crystal on the center rack. Can't miss it." Derek held the door open, his neural signature broadcasting helpfulness that his eyes contradicted. Maya stepped through into a stone corridor. The temperature dropped immediately, the cold hitting her like a physical force. "Derek, this is freezing." The door closed behind her with a heavy thunk that echoed down the stone passage. Then she heard it, the mechanical click of a smart lock engaging, confirmed by a soft chime from her neural implant. "Derek?" She tried the handle. It didn't move. Derek, through the small frosted window set high in the door. She could see shapes moving in the distance, her family heading back toward the main house, their neural signatures glowing like fireflies as they walked away. She was alone in the wine cellar, in a thin coat, in -10-degree weather. Maya pounded on the door, the sound dull against the thick wood. She pulled out her phone, actual phone, not just neural interface, but the stone walls blocked all signal. Her neural implant's connection flickered and died, leaving her completely isolated, her breath clouded in the air, visible proof that her body was losing heat faster than it could generate it. She wrapped her arms around herself and tried to think. The wine cellar stretched below her. Rows of bottles stored at carefully controlled temperatures. Temperatures that were fine for wine but dangerous for humans. She'd read about hypothermia. Knew that at -10, she had maybe an hour before serious symptoms set in. Maybe less, given how thin her coat was. She kept pounding on the door, kept calling for help, but her voice grew weaker and her hands went numb and the cold settled into her bones like an old certainty. In Derek's study, James pretended to review the documents on the holographic display while Derek talked. But his attention kept fracturing, his mind returning to the dinner conversation, to Maya's face when she talked about coral polyps like they were miracles. To the way she'd looked at her family like she was used to being the smallest thing in the room. Where did Maya go? He interrupted Derek mid-sentence. Derek looked up, surprised. "Maya? She's with the family at the pavilion." "Why? I thought she might want to." James stood, decision made. "You know what, let's continue this tomorrow. I should get back to the group, already?" "But we haven't finished." James was already moving toward the door, his neural implant pinging the location of the pavilion, mapping the fastest route. Something felt wrong. Not data, not logic, just a feeling that had nothing to do with his premium implant's analytical capabilities. He reached the pavilion to find it empty except for abandoned champagne glasses and the lingering glow of AR projections fading without an audience. Through the main house's windows, he could see the family had moved inside, their neural signatures clustered in the warm light of the living room. Then he heard it. Faint. Almost lost under the sound of wind through the trees. A voice, growing weaker. Help. Someone. Please. The Hyperloop pod decelerated with barely a whisper, and through the curved transparency of the viewport, the Chen estate materialized like something out of a fever dream. Towers of bioluminescent glass spiraled upward into the smog-filtered twilight, their facades alive with shifting holographic advertisements for products Kira Chen couldn't afford and wouldn't want if she could. The family compound occupied 12 acres of what had once been public parkland before her grandfather's generation had purchased, privatized, and perfected it into this monument to excess. Kira pressed her palm against the scanner as the pod door irised open. Her biometric data flickered across the security interface: name, occupation, net worth, social capital score, and she watched the numbers populate with the detached interest of someone observing a particularly unimpressive lab result. Marine biologist. Current credit balance, 4,847 yuan. Social capital, 2.3 out of 10. The system hesitated, as if uncertain whether to grant access to someone so obviously beneath the family's current standards, then flashed green. Blood still counted for something, apparently. The main pavilion hummed with that particular frequency of wealth that Kira had learned to recognize and resent in equal measure. Servodrones drifted through the crowds carrying trays of champagne that cost more per glass than her monthly food budget. The guests wore their status like armor, neural lace threading visibly through their temples, designer jean mods that made their skin luminescent or their eyes unnaturally striking, clothing woven from smart fabric that shifted colors based on the wearer's mood and the room's social dynamics. Kira's own dress, a simple navy sheath she'd worn to 3 conferences already, felt like a surrender flag. Little Kira. Her cousin Marcus spotted her first, his smile sharp enough to gut fish. He'd had his teeth replaced last year, biological diamond, he'd made sure everyone knew, and they caught the light with predatory precision. Didn't think you'd make it. Isn't there a kelp forest somewhere that needs your urgent attention? The 3 people flanking him laughed with the synchronized enthusiasm of those whose livelihoods depended on Marcus's approval. Kira recognized the type: professional networkers, influence traders, the kind of people who measured their worth in follower counts and investment portfolios. The kelp can wait, Kira said. Family obligations and all, family obligations. Marcus tasted the words like wine. Is that what we're calling this? I thought it was more of a mandatory appearance. Grandmother does hate when people skip her little performances. The casual mention of their grandmother sent a ripple through Kira's chest. Evelyn Chen, matriarch of the family empire, had summoned them all with the kind of message that permitted no refusal: presence required at the annual status gala to discuss matters of inheritance and family standing. The subtext had been clear enough. This was Judgment Day. Marcus leaned closer, and Kira caught the scent of whatever designer pheromone cologne he'd adopted this season. Between us, I hear the old dragon is finally restructuring the trust. About time, honestly. Some of us have been building actual empires while others have been playing with sea sponges. Coral, Kira corrected automatically. I work with coral restoration, right, Coral? That thing that's already dead, isn't it? The reef's dying. Not dead. There's a difference, is there? Marcus straightened, his attention already wandering to someone more important across the room. Well, good luck tonight, cousin. I'm sure grandmother will be very impressed with your, what do you call it? Your passion project, he drifted away, his entourage following like remora fish. Kira stood alone in the crush of bodies, feeling the familiar weight of invisibility settle over her shoulders. This was how it always went at family gatherings. She was the footnote, the embarrassment, the one who'd taken her modest inheritance, 50,000 yuan, barely enough for a year's rent in Beijing, and done something as foolish as pursuing actual purpose instead of profit. You look like you're calculating the most efficient exit route. The voice came from directly behind her, low and amused. Kira turned and found herself looking at someone she didn't recognize, which was notable in itself. She knew every member of the Chen family tree, every business associate and social climber who typically populated these events. This man was new. He was tall, with the kind of elegant features that suggested either exceptional genetics or expensive modification. It was impossible to tell anymore. His suit was understated but clearly custom, the fabric catching light in ways that indicated active tech woven through it. No visible neural lace, no obvious augmentation, but his eyes were sharp enough to suggest he missed nothing. I was calculating how long I have to stay before it becomes acceptable to leave, Kira said, and 2 hours minimum. 3 to be safe. For if I want to avoid my mother's disappointment calls for the next month, his mouth curved. That's very precise, I've had practice. I'm Dominic Wu. He extended a hand, an old-fashioned gesture that felt deliberately chosen. I work with your grandmother's investment portfolio. Well, one of them. She has several. Kira shook his hand, noting the calluses on his palm. Interesting. Most people in his income bracket had those buffed away. Kira Chen. I work with things that don't generate dividends, the coral restoration. I've read about your work. That surprised her enough that she actually looked at him properly instead of performing the polite half-attention she'd perfected for these gatherings. You've read about my work, the paper on thermotolerant coral strains and their genetic markers. Published in Marine Biology Quarterly last year. He said it casually, as if reading obscure marine biology journals was a normal hobby for investment managers. The methodology was elegant. Kira felt heat rise to her face and immediately resented it. She'd spent years building immunity to praise. The few times it came, it was usually backhanded or performance-based. Genuine recognition for her work felt like a trap. Most people find it dry, most people don't understand what they're reading. Dominic accepted a glass of champagne from a passing drone but didn't drink. Your work has implications beyond environmental restoration. The genetic markers you identified could revolutionize aquaculture protein production. That's a 2 trillion yuan industry. That's not why I did the research, I know. That's what makes it interesting. Before Kira could parse that statement, a chime resonated through the pavilion, not sound exactly, but a vibration that bypassed ears and went straight to the auditory cortex. Neural broadcast. Everyone stopped talking simultaneously, their attention pulled toward the raised platform at the pavilion's center. Evelyn Chen had arrived. She was 94 years old and looked 60 at most, the benefits of gene therapy and cellular regeneration that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. She wore a traditional qipao rendered in smart fabric that rippled like liquid mercury, and her silver hair was styled in a way that managed to look both severe and elegant. The neural crown threading through her temples pulsed with soft blue light, visible evidence of the augmentation that let her interface directly with her various corporate networks. My family, she said, and her voice was everywhere, transmitted through everyone's neural implants with the intimacy of thought. Thank you for gathering. The crowd arranged itself in unconscious hierarchy. Marcus positioned himself in the front, flanked by his siblings and their spouses. Kira's mother, Helena, stood with Kira's father Thomas in the second tier, their expressions carefully neutral. Other cousins, aunts, uncles, all positioned according to their current standing in the family's complex power structure. Kira found herself at the back, naturally. Dominic Wu remained beside her, which was odd. Someone in his position should be closer to the center of power. Tonight marks the annual assessment, Evelyn continued. As you know, the Chin Family Trust undergoes regular restructuring based on individual contribution, initiative, and alignment with our family's values. A holographic display materialized above the platform, showing a complex web of financial entities, investment portfolios, and asset distributions. Kira recognized the structure. She'd seen versions of it at every gala since she turned 18. Her own name appeared in one corner, connected to a thin line that represented her trust allocation. 50,000 yuan, untouched since she'd received it 8 years ago. She'd lived off her university salary and research grants instead, using the inheritance money only once, to fund an emergency coral transplant operation when her primary grant had fallen through. Marcus's line was thick, pulsing with activity. Multiple business ventures, investment properties, a venture capital fund. His social capital score glowed at 8.7, impressively high. Other cousins showed similar activity: real estate development, tech startups, influencer marketing empires. Some of you have built impressive portfolios, Evelyn said. You've leveraged your initial investments into substantial returns. You've raised our family's profile and expanded our influence. Marcus actually stood straighter, preening. Others, and here Evelyn's gaze swept across the back of the room, landing briefly on Kira, have chosen different paths. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Kira felt every eye turn toward her, felt the weight of judgment settle like a physical thing. Her social capital score blinked in the corner of the display, 2.3. The lowest in the family by a significant margin. Kira, darling, Helena's voice cut through the silence, transmitted through the family's private neural channel. Please tell me you're not wearing that dress. Kira didn't respond. She'd learned years ago that engaging with her mother's disappointment only fed it. My question tonight, Evelyn continued, is simple. What defines success? What creates value? And who among you truly embodies the principles upon which this family was built? The holographic display shifted, showing a new metric, one Kira had never seen before. Instead of financial portfolios and social capital, it showed something else. Impact indices. Sustainability ratings. Long-term value creation versus short-term profit extraction. The room's energy changed immediately. Marcus's line, so impressive moments before, suddenly showed red flags. High resource consumption, negative environmental impact. Questionable labor practices in his supply chains. Other cousins' ventures revealed similar issues: profit built on exploitation, success measured in extraction rather than creation. And there, in the corner, Kira's thin line suddenly blossomed with data. Hectares of reef restored. Carbon sequestration rates. Marine biodiversity indices. Publication citations. The ripple effect of her research through other institutions and projects. Her work training local communities in reef restoration techniques, creating sustainable livelihoods that would last generations. Your 50,000 yuan investment, Evelyn said, looking directly at Kira now, has generated more measurable positive impact than ventures 10,000 times its size. The silence was absolute. Of course, Marcus said, his voice tight, impact doesn't pay bills. Impact doesn't generate returns. With all respect, grandmother, we can't run a family empire on good intentions, can't we? Evelyn's smile was sharp. Interesting assumption, Marcus. Tell me, what's the current status of your venture capital fund? Marcus hesitated, just for a moment. We're projecting 18% annual returns. You're projecting. Your actual returns for the last 3 years have been -4%. Your fund survives on family capital injections and creative accounting. She turned to another cousin. And you, Jennifer. Your influencer marketing empire. What happens when the algorithm changes? When your audience ages out? When the next platform emerges, Jennifer's luminescent skin flickered, betraying her stress. We're diversifying into nothing sustainable. Nothing lasting. You've built houses of cards and convinced yourselves their foundations. Evelyn's voice wasn't cruel, exactly, but it was utterly uncompromising. Meanwhile, Kira's work will outlive us all. Those restored reefs will support ecosystems for centuries. Her research has been replicated in 17 countries. She's created something that can't be bought or sold or manipulated by market forces. Kira's heart was pounding. This couldn't be happening. This kind of vindication didn't happen to people like her. However, Evelyn continued, and Kira's brief moment of triumph evaporated. Good work means nothing if it starves you. Noble poverty is still poverty. Kira, how much did you earn last year? The question landed like a blade. Kira knew everyone could access her financial data. Privacy was largely fictional in their world, but having it stated aloud was different. 38,000 yuan. Before expenses, you live in a 90-square-foot pod apartment in the university district. You eat protein paste 4 days a week to afford equipment. You haven't purchased new clothing in 3 years. Evelyn's expression was unreadable. Why? Because the work is more important than comfort, is it? Or is it because you've convinced yourself that suffering validates your choices? The question hit harder than Kira expected. She felt Dominic Wu's presence beside her, felt him watching her response. I don't suffer, Kira said carefully. I simply prioritize differently. You martyr yourself, Helena interjected, unable to help herself. You always have. It's a form of arrogance, really. As if being poor makes you morally superior. I never said, you don't have to say it. You perform it. Every time you show up to family events in that dress, every time you refuse gifts. Every time you make us feel guilty for having ambition. Helena's voice carried that particular tone of maternal disappointment that could flay skin. You've made poverty your identity, Kira. Your brand. And now look, grandmother validates it, and you think you've won something. The pavilion was silent. Everyone watching. Everyone judging. Kira felt something crack inside her chest. Not heartbreak, she'd stopped breaking over her mother's opinions years ago. Something else. A recognition of truth in the cruelty. She had made poverty a badge of honor. She had convinced herself that struggling validated her work, that comfort would corrupt her principles. Perhaps, Evelyn said quietly. And her voice was gentle now, almost kind. Both things can be true. Your work has value, Kira. Immense value. And you've been punishing yourself for choosing it over profit. These are not mutually exclusive realities. Kira couldn't speak. Her throat had closed, which brings me to tonight's announcement. Evelyn's voice strengthened, addressing the full room again. I'm restructuring the trust entirely. New metrics. New allocations. New priorities. The holographic display shifted again, showing a revised distribution. Marcus's allocation had shrunk to a quarter of its previous size. Other cousins showed similar reductions. And Kira's line had expanded into something she couldn't process. Numbers with too many zeros. Investment portfolios she didn't understand. Asset allocations that made no sense. Kira will receive a working capital allocation of 5 million yuan annually for the next 10 years to expand her research operation. Additionally, she'll have access to the family's private research facilities, equipment, and vessel fleet. She will direct the Chen Foundation's new environmental restoration initiative with a 200 million yuan endowment. The room erupted. Marcus was shouting. Helena looked like she might faint. Other family members were talking over each other, their voices creating a cacophony even through the neural channels. Dominic Wu leaned close to Kira, his voice cutting through the chaos. Breathe. You're not breathing. She wasn't. She pulled an air, felt the world tilt, steadied herself against nothing. This is insane, Marcus was saying. She's done nothing to earn this. Nothing. We've built businesses, created jobs, expanded the family influence. You've extracted value and called it creation, Evelyn said. You've built empires on exploitation and convinced yourselves it was genius. I'm done enabling it, so you're rewarding failure instead? Jennifer's voice was shrill. Rewarding poverty and self-righteousness? I'm investing in the future. Evelyn's voice was steel. In work that matters. In principles over profit. If you can't understand the difference, then you've already failed the only test that matters. Kira's mind was racing. This was too much. Too visible. Too vulnerable. She'd survived family gatherings by being invisible, by asking nothing, by expecting nothing. Now she was the center of everything, and every eye that had dismissed her was now burning with resentment or calculation or both. I need air, she managed. She turned and walked, not caring if it looked like retreat, needing desperately to be anywhere but in that room with those eyes and that attention. She made it to one of the pavilion's balconies before her hands started shaking. The city sprawled below, a carpet of lights and holograms and the endless churn of commerce. Somewhere down there were the things she actually cared about, the ocean, the reefs, the quiet work of restoration that didn't come with spotlights or judgment. That was quite a performance. Dominic Wu had followed her. Of course he had. Kira turned to tell him she wanted to be alone, but the words died when she saw his expression. He wasn't looking at her with pity or calculation. He looked impressed. Maybe even awed. I didn't ask for any of that, Kira said. I know. That's why she gave it to you. Everyone in there hates me now. They hated you before. Now they have to take you seriously while they do it. Significant upgrade. He moved to stand beside her at the railing. Close enough that she could feel his warmth. Your grandmother has been planning this for 3 years. I helped structure some of the financial instruments. That explained his presence, his interest in her work. He'd been evaluating her. Another person with ulterior motives, so you knew, Kira said. You knew all along what was going to happen tonight. I knew the framework. I didn't know you. He turned to face her fully. Reading someone's research papers doesn't tell you how they'll handle sudden visibility. Or power. Or family resentment. And how am I handling it? You ran away to process privately instead of performing emotions for an audience. You're either very smart or very avoidant. Can't it be both? His smile was genuine this time, reaching his eyes. Definitely both. They stood in silence for a moment. Inside, the gala continued, voices raised in argument or negotiation or damage control. Kira could feel the neural notifications piling up in her peripheral vision, messages from family members, requests for calls, questions she had no answers for. What happens now? She asked. Now you have to decide what kind of power you want to wield. Dominic's voice was quiet, serious. Your grandmother gave you resources. What you do with them determines whether this is a gift or a burden. I don't want power. I want to restore coral reefs. Those aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they're symbiotic. He pulled something from his pocket, not a device, but an actual physical card, rare and deliberately old-fashioned. My direct contact. No corporate filters, no family oversight. If you want help navigating this new reality, or if you just want someone to talk to who isn't trying to manipulate you into something, use it. Kira took the card, felt the weight of actual paper between her fingers. Why would you help me? Because I think you're about to do something remarkable, and I'd like to watch it happen. He paused. Also because your research on thermotolerant coral has implications for my own project, and I'm hoping we can collaborate. But mostly the first thing. What project? Underwater agricultural systems. Protein production that doesn't require land or fresh water. Your coral work suggests methods for creating sustainable marine ecosystems that could support large-scale food production. His expression was animated now, enthusiastic in a way that reminded Kira of herself when she talked about reef restoration. We could feed millions while simultaneously rebuilding ocean ecosystems. But I need someone who understands the biology. Something sparked in Kira's chest. Not attraction, or not only attraction, but recognition. The way a scientist feels when someone else understands the potential of their work, sees the connections others miss. That's ambitious, she said. So is restoring the world's coral reefs on a university salary. Fair point. I should go back in, Kira said, though she didn't move. Face the aftermath, you should. But first, a piece of advice. Dominic leaned against the railing, his shoulder nearly touching hers. Your family is going to try to tear you down. They'll question your competence, your motives, your right to the resources you've been given. Don't defend yourself. Don't justify. Just do the work and let the results speak. That's what I've always done. I know. Keep doing it. But now you'll have an audience, and that changes things. He straightened. Ready? She wasn't. But she nodded anyway. They walked back into the pavilion together, and Kira felt every eye track their movement. Dominic Wu, investment manager and apparently her grandmother's trusted advisor, walking beside Kira Chen, former family embarrassment and sudden heir to significant resources. The implications would be calculated and recalculated by every person in the room. Marcus intercepted them immediately. His diamond teeth were bared in what was technically a smile. Congratulations, cousin. Quite a windfall, thank you. I hope you're prepared for what comes with it. Resources require oversight. Accountability. Grandmother may trust you, but the family board will want regular reports. Audits. Proof of effective capital deployment. I'm sure Kira will provide whatever documentation is required, Dominic said smoothly. As the Foundation's primary financial architect, I'll be ensuring full transparency. Marcus's smile didn't waver, but something cold flashed in his eyes. Of course. I look forward to reviewing the preliminary budget allocations. I assume those will be available within the week, 2 weeks, Kira said, pulling the number from nowhere. I need time to assess current projects and identify optimal expansion opportunities. 2 weeks. Reasonable. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping below the neural broadcast range. Enjoy your moment, Kira. But remember, family money comes with family strings. And some of us are very good at pulling them. He walked away, leaving a trace of expensive cologne and implicit threat. He's going to make this difficult, Kira said. He's going to try. Dominic's voice was unworried. Let him. You have something he doesn't. What's that? Actual work to do. While he's plotting to undermine you, you'll be too busy accomplishing things to notice. Kira looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. Dominic Wu, investment manager and apparent ally, standing in her corner at a family gala designed to expose hierarchy and weakness. She didn't trust him. Couldn't trust him. But something in her wanted to. I should introduce you to my mother, she said. She'll want to assess whether you're a threat or an opportunity. What do you think I am? I think you're someone who reads marine biology journals for fun, which makes you either genuinely interested or dangerously good at manipulation." His laugh was surprised and genuine. "Fair assessment. For what it's worth, I really did find your methodology elegant. That's exactly what a dangerous manipulator would say." Also true, Helena materialized beside them like weather, sudden and unavoidable. She'd composed herself since Evelyn's announcement, her expression now carefully neutral. But Kira could read the calculation in her eyes. "Kira. Mr. Wu." Helena extended her hand to Dominic with the gracious efficiency of someone who'd perfected social navigation decades ago. "I don't believe we've been properly introduced, Dominic Wu. I manage several of Mrs. Chen's investment portfolios." "How lovely." "And you were discussing coral restoration funding mechanisms," Kira said flatly. Helena's smile tightened. "Of course. How wonderful that Kira's little project is finally receiving proper attention. Though I must admit, darling, I'm surprised grandmother chose such a public venue for the announcement. All this attention must be overwhelming for you." The concern was performative, designed to suggest Kira was fragile, unprepared, likely to crack under pressure. Kira had heard variations of this particular melody her entire life. "I'm managing," she said. "Well, if you need any guidance navigating your new responsibilities, your father and I have decades of experience with trust management and capital allocation. We'd be happy to help." Translation: let us control the money, make the decisions, run the show while you play with your coral. "I appreciate the offer," Kira said. "I'll let you know if I need assistance." Helena's expression flickered, barely, but Kira caught it. Surprised that her daughter had deflected instead of capitulating. "Of course. Whatever you need." She drifted away, already targeting someone else, already calculating her next move. "Your mother is a piece of work," Dominic observed. "She's not usually that transparent. You've got her off balance." "Me? You're standing with me. Supporting me. She can't figure out why." Kira watched her mother work the room, saw the careful way she positioned herself near Evelyn. In her world, people don't help without expecting returns. "She's trying to calculate your angle." "Maybe I don't have one. Everyone has an angle, even you." The question stopped her. Did she have an angle? She'd spent so long defining herself in opposition to her family's values that she'd never considered whether she was performing a different kind of calculation. Virtue as currency. Poverty as brand. Her mother's accusation echoing, "You've made it your identity." "I don't know anymore," Kira admitted. Dominic studied her face with uncomfortable intensity. "That's the most honest thing anyone has said to me all night." Before Kira could respond, the pavilion lights dimmed and Evelyn's voice filled the space again. "One more announcement before the evening concludes." The room settled, everyone orienting toward the platform where Evelyn stood. Behind her, the holographic display shifted to show something new, a vessel. Not just any vessel, but something sleek and purpose-built, bristling with research equipment and underwater deployment systems. "The Chin family is commissioning a new research vessel," Evelyn said. "State-of-the-art marine biology laboratory, autonomous diving systems, zero-emission propulsion. The first of its kind. It will be dedicated to coral reef restoration and marine ecosystem research." The specifications scrolled past, Kira's mind automatically cataloging the capabilities, the possibilities. This wasn't just a boat. This was everything she'd dreamed of having, everything she'd written grant proposals for and been denied, everything she'd convinced herself was impossible. "The vessel will be named the Persistent," Evelyn continued. "In honor of my granddaughter's defining quality. Kira, the ship is yours. Use it well." The room erupted again, more controlled this time, but no less chaotic. Kira felt something break inside her, not painfully but like a dam giving way. Tears pressed against her eyes, and she refused them. Not here. Not in front of everyone. She felt Dominic's hand on her elbow, steadying. You should probably say something. I don't know what to say. Say thank you. Say you'll honor the gift. Say anything that isn't crying. She almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she walked toward the platform, feeling every eye track her movement, every judgment and resentment and calculation focused on her like laser points. Evelyn watched her approach with something that might have been pride or might have been satisfaction at a plan executed perfectly. Kira climbed the platform stairs, stood beside her grandmother, looked out at the assembled family. Her family. These people who dismissed her, pitted her, resented her, ignored her. These people she was about to have power over, resources they wanted, influence they'd have to navigate. Thank you, she said, and her voice was steady even though everything inside her was not. I'll make sure the persistence serves its purpose. Real research. Real results. Real impact. We know you will, Evelyn said. She put a hand on Kira's shoulder, brief, firm, a gesture that spoke of approval and expectation in equal measure. Then she turned to address the room. This concludes tonight's announcements. Please, enjoy the remainder of the evening. Music resumed. Conversations restarted. The gala's momentum carried forward. But everything had changed, and everyone knew it. Kira descended from the platform and found Dominic waiting. Well, he said. That was understated. I don't do grand speeches, I noticed. Come on, let's get you something stronger than champagne. You look like you need it. He guided her toward one of the pavilion's private alcoves, away from the main crowd. They passed groups of family members in intense conversation, saw the way people tracked Kira's movement, calculating approaches and angles. Marcus stood with a cluster of cousins, his expression murderous. Helena was deep in conversation with Thomas, both of them radiating controlled panic. The alcove was mercifully quiet, shielded by active sound dampening. Dominic ordered something from the service interface, whiskey, neat, expensive enough that the system verified his biometrics twice. He handed Kira the glass. I don't usually drink, she said. Tonight you do, she sipped. The liquor burned perfectly, grounding her. This is all insane. Yes, I don't know how to do any of this. Manage resources, direct a foundation, captain a research vessel, you'll figure it out. You figured out how to restore coral reefs on no budget. This is just the same work with better tools. It's not. It's visibility. Accountability. Everyone waiting for me to fail. Some people, Dominic agreed. But not everyone. Your grandmother believes in you. I believe in you. You don't know me. I know your work. That's enough. He paused, seemed to consider something. Full disclosure, I pushed for this. The vessel, the funding allocation. I've been arguing with your grandmother for 6 months that you deserved substantial resources. So if this goes badly, it's partially my fault. Kira stared at him. Why would you do that? Because I read your research and saw someone who could actually change things. Because I'm tired of watching capital flow to people who just want to extract and destroy. Because, he stopped, ran a hand through his hair in a gesture that felt uncharacteristically uncertain. Because when I first met your grandmother 3 years ago, she told me about you. About her granddaughter who chose coral over comfort, purpose over profit. And I couldn't stop thinking about you. The air between them felt suddenly charged. Kira was acutely aware of how close they were standing, how his eyes were fixed on her with an intensity that had nothing to do with coral restoration or family politics. That's a lot of emotional investment in someone you'd never met, she said. I'm aware it's slightly unhinged. Slightly, his smile was self-deprecating. Okay, very unhinged. But here we are, and you're even more remarkable than your research suggested, so I'm going to call it a win. Kira knew she should step back, create distance, maintain professional boundaries. Instead, she found herself leaning closer. You know this is a terrible idea. What is, whatever this is? Whatever you're thinking, I'm thinking, Dominic said quietly, that watching you handle tonight with that much grace while your family imploded around you was the most attractive thing I've ever witnessed. I'm thinking I want to help you build something extraordinary. And I'm thinking I should probably stop talking before I say something even more inappropriate. Probably. Neither of them moved. The moment stretched, taut with possibility. Kira could feel her pulse in her throat, could see the exact moment Dominic's gaze dropped to her mouth and then back up. I should go, she said. You should. My mother is probably looking for me. Plotting intervention strategies, definitely plotting something, and I need to start planning. Budget allocation, project prioritization, team building. Kira, what? Stop talking for a second, she did. Dominic reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture that was far too intimate for their barely established relationship. His hand lingered near her face. You're going to be brilliant, he said. You're going to do things no one else could do. And I'm going to help you however I can. No strings. No angles. Just, let me be part of this. Kira's chest felt tight. She wasn't used to this, to being seen, to being valued, to someone looking at her like she was worth this kind of attention. It felt dangerous and thrilling and completely overwhelming. Okay, she whispered, okay. His smile was genuine and slightly disbelieving, like he hadn't expected her to agree. Before either of them could complicate the moment further, Kira's neural interface chimed with an urgent message. Evelyn, come to my private office. Now. Alone, the warmth of the moment evaporated. Kira stepped back, professional distance reasserting itself. I have to go. Grandmother wants to see me. Good luck, I'm going to need it. She left the alcove, feeling Dominic's eyes follow her. The pavilion's crowds parted as she moved through them, not quite deference, but a new awareness that she wasn't invisible anymore. She was a player now. A threat. Someone worth calculating around. The walk to Evelyn's private office felt like a march to execution. What now? What additional revelation, what new responsibility, what impossible expectation? Kira's mind spun through possibilities, none of them comforting. She reached the door, real wood. Antique, another deliberate display of wealth, and placed her palm on the scanner. The lock disengaged with a soft click. She stepped inside. Evelyn sat behind a desk that probably cost more than Kira's entire year's salary, looking every inch the corporate matriarch. But her expression was softer now, without the performance required for the public gala. Close the door, darling, Kira did. Stood before the desk like a student called to the principal's office. Sit down. You're not in trouble. Kira sat, perched on the edge of an uncomfortable chair that was, probably designed to keep visitors off balance. Evelyn studied her for a long moment. I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything. I do. Tonight was brutal, and you deserved warning. Evelyn leaned back in her chair. I've been watching you for 8 years, Kira. Since you took your inheritance and immediately invested it in your research instead of yourself. Since you chose a pod apartment and protein paste over comfort. Since you published paper after paper that nobody in this family bothered to read. They don't care about Coral. They don't care about anything that doesn't immediately benefit them. But you, Evelyn's voice carried something that might have been regret. You inherited the best parts of this family. The parts one tried to build before money corrupted everything. Kira didn't know what to say to that. I'm dying, Evelyn said simply. Real dying, not the kind that money can fix. 6 months, maybe 8. And I needed to know this family would continue to mean something after I'm gone. The world tilted. Kira gripped the chair arms. Grandmother, don't. Don't make sympathetic noises or offer comfort. I've had 94 years, most of them good. I'm not afraid of ending. Evelyn's gaze was steady. But I am afraid of leaving behind a family of parasites. So I'm gambling everything on you. I don't understand, you will. Tonight was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, I'm going to transfer enormous resources to your control. The foundation, the vessel, investment portfolios, property holdings. You're going to become one of the wealthiest people in this family. Kira couldn't breathe. Why? Because you're the only one who might use it for something other than ego and extraction. Because I believe you'll build something that lasts. Because Evelyn smiled, and it was sad and fierce at once. Because you're exactly who I wanted to be before the world taught me that wanting things was enough. I'll fail. I'll disappoint you, probably. But you'll fail trying to do something that matters, and that's more than anyone else in this family can claim. They sat in silence. Outside, the gala continued, oblivious to this private apocalypse. I don't know how to be what you need me to be. Kira said finally, good. Figure it out. Make mistakes. Build something extraordinary. Just don't waste it. Evelyn stood, moved around the desk, and did something completely unexpected. She pulled Kira into a hug. Brief, firm, smelling of expensive perfume and something underneath that was just grandmother. You're going to be remarkable. You already are. The money just lets more people see it. Kira's eyes burned with tears she still refused to shed. I'm terrified. Excellent. Terror means you understand the stakes. Evelyn pulled back, hands on Kira's shoulders. Now go back out there. Face your family. Show them you're not backing down. What if they destroy me? Then you'll rebuild. That's what you do, you restore things everyone else thinks are dead. Start with yourself if you have to. The elevator to the penthouse played ambient music designed to lower blood pressure, which was ironic given that Kira's heart rate had been climbing steadily for the past 20 minutes. Through the glass walls, Neo-Singapore sprawled below in layers of light and architecture, floating platforms connected by maglev tracks, holographic advertisements that shifted based on who was looking at them, buildings that grew and contracted based on occupancy algorithms. Somewhere down there were the labs where she actually did her work, the underwater research stations where coral polyps grew under her careful attention. The parts of her life that made sense. Up here, nothing made sense. The elevator chimed, a sound that had been focus grouped to trigger dopamine responses, and the doors whispered open. Kira stepped into her grandmother's atrium and immediately felt underdressed. She was wearing the same charcoal blazer she'd worn to the marine biology conference last month, the one with the worn cuffs she kept meaning to replace. Her neural interface was the standard university model, 5 years old, visible as a thin silver line along her temple instead of the invisible subdermal versions everyone else would be sporting. Her augmented reality overlays were basic, showing only essential information instead of the constant stream of social capital scores and net worth estimators that most people couldn't function without. The atrium itself was an exercise in calculated opulence. The floor was actual marble, not smart tile that could change patterns. The ceiling arched 30 feet overhead, embedded with bioluminescent organisms that created living constellations. Every surface whispered about money, not the kind you earned, but the kind you inherited and then multiplied through investments you barely understood. Kira Chen. The voice came from an AI concierge that materialized as a hologram beside her. It wore the face and form of a classical butler, because of course it did. Welcome. Your biometric data has been logged. Your social capital score is processing. Your presence has been announced to the gathering. May I offer you refreshment? Water is fine, still or sparkling? Temperature preference? Mineral content? pH level? We have 17 options. Tap water. Kira watched the hologram's expression flicker with something that might have been programmed confusion. Just regular tap water. Will see what I can do. The hologram vanished, and Kira was left alone in the atrium with her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows. She looked exactly like what she was, a woman who'd chosen substance over surface, who'd taken her modest inheritance and invested it in research instead of appearance, who measured success in restored reef coverage instead of follower counts. Her reflection looked tired. She looked like she belonged somewhere else. The sound of footsteps made her turn. A man emerged from the hallway leading deeper into the penthouse, and Kira's threat assessment protocols, basic survival instinct in a family like hers, immediately started cataloging details. Mid-30s, wearing a suit that probably cost more than her quarterly salary but wearing it like he'd forgotten he had it on. Dark hair, slight curl, pushed back from his face in a way that suggested he'd run his hands through it recently. Neural interface so subtle she almost missed it, expensive, custom, probably military-grade processing power hidden under that sophisticated exterior. His augmented reality display was active. She could see the faint shimmer around his pupils that meant he was processing multiple data streams, but he wasn't letting it distract him from actual human interaction. Interesting, you must be Kira. He extended his hand in that deliberately old-fashioned gesture that some people used to signal authenticity. Adrian Zhao. I manage some of your grandmother's offshore accounts. She shook his hand, noting calluses that didn't match his profession. Offshore accounts. That's a polite way of saying you help rich people hide money from taxation algorithms. His mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. I prefer to think of it as optimizing fiscal architecture within legal parameters. I prefer to think of it as exactly what I said. Now he did smile, and it transformed his face from generically handsome to genuinely interested. Your file said you were direct. It undersold the experience. You have a file on me? Your grandmother has files on everyone. Mine says I have trust issues and a tendency toward excessive honesty. Apparently, those are good qualities in someone who manages money. He gestured toward the hallway. The gathering is in the main salon. I was sent to escort you. Why do I need an escort? Because your grandmother wanted to make sure you didn't turn around and leave before anyone saw you arrive. Kira appreciated the honesty even as she resented the accuracy. She knows me too well. She says you're the only grandchild who inherited her actual personality instead of just her genetic predisposition toward stubbornness. Adrian started walking, and Kira fell into step beside him. Which apparently makes you simultaneously her favorite and biggest disappointment. I'm aware. They walked through corridors that were more like art installations than hallways. Every surface displayed something. Family photos rendered in holographic detail, achievement certificates that updated in real time as family members accomplished things worth documenting, a running ticker of the Chen family's total net worth that made Kira's stomach turn. Currently hovering at 47.3 billion yuan and climbing. Your research is impressive, Adrian said as they walked. The thermotolerant coral strains. The genetic markers you identified. Kira glanced at him sharply. You read my work. I read everything about everyone I'm going to meet. Professional habit. Also genuine interest in your case. The implications for marine ecosystem restoration are significant. He paused. Though I have to ask, why coral? Of all the problems you could have chosen to solve. Because coral reefs support a quarter of all marine species while covering less than 1% of the ocean floor. Because they protect coastlines and generate billions in economic value. Because they're dying at catastrophic rates and most people don't care. She heard the edge in her own voice and tried to soften it. Because someone has to, that's not really an answer. That's a justification. Adrian's voice was gentle, curious rather than challenging. Why do you care? The question hit differently than expected. Most people asked about her research methodology or her funding sources or her publication record. No one asked why she cared. When I was 8, Kira heard herself saying, "My father took me diving in the South China Sea. I saw a reef that looked like an underwater garden, purple and gold and blue, fish everywhere, so much life it made me dizzy. 5 years later, we went back. Everything was white. Dead. Bleached. Like someone had come through with industrial cleaner and scrubbed away all the color, all the life." She pushed back the memory of child Kira crying into her mask, her father's awkward attempts at comfort. "I decided then that I'd spend my life making sure it didn't happen again. That I'd give back what we'd taken." Adrian was quiet for a moment. "That's the real answer. That's the expensive answer. Most people don't want to hear about childhood trauma and ecosystem collapse. They want easily digestible sound bites about innovation and sustainability. I'm not most people." Before Kira could parse that statement, they reached the entrance to the main salon, and all her attention snapped to the scene beyond the archway. The room was designed to intimidate. 3 stories tall, wrapped in transparent aluminum that offered panoramic views of the city below, filled with people who'd turned self-promotion into an art form. Kira's augmented reality interface immediately began populating data, names, social capital scores, net worth estimates, recent achievements. Her cousin Marcus stood near the center, surrounded by admirers, his AR display showing a social capital score of 9.1 out of 10. He'd had cosmetic genetic modification last year, enhanced bone structure, optimized metabolism, eyes that were slightly too blue to be natural. He looked like an AI-generated image of human perfection. Her Aunt Patricia held court near the windows, wearing a dress woven from smart fabric that shifted colors based on her emotional state. Currently, it displayed serene blues and golds, signaling confidence and contentment. Her Uncle Richard stood beside her, his neural interface crown visible and ostentatious, 6 connection points instead of the standard 2. Broadcasting that he could process data streams far beyond normal human capacity. The room hummed with that particular frequency of wealth and status that made Kira's skin crawl. Every conversation was a performance, every laugh calculated for maximum social capital gain. Servo drones drifted overhead carrying champagne that cost more per glass than Kira spent on food in a week. The air smelled like expensive cologne and ambient aromatherapy designed to reduce stress while increasing suggestibility. "Breathe," Adrian murmured beside her. "They can sense fear. They can sense my bank balance through their AR displays." "Fear is redundant. Your bank balance isn't what worries them. It's your lack of caring about theirs." Kira glanced at him, surprised. Before she could respond, Marcus spotted them. His expression flickered through several calculations, surprise, assessment, decision, before settling on performative warmth. He excused himself from his group and glided over with the practiced ease of someone who'd been training for rooms like this since birth. "Little Kira." His smile was perfectly calibrated, friendly but not intimate, warm but not genuine. His AR readout flickered above his head, visible to anyone with the right permissions, showing his recent achievements: 3 successful business launches, 2 viral social media campaigns, an engagement to an heiress whose family fortune rivaled their own. "I wasn't sure you'd make it. Don't you have some kelp to measure or something?" The group he'd been talking to laughed, synchronized, rehearsed, the sound of people who'd learned to mirror whatever the highest status person in the room wanted. "Coral," Kira corrected. "I work with coral restoration, right, Coral." That's the stuff that's already dead, isn't it? The Great Barrier Reef and all that? Marcus's tone was friendly, curious, completely devoid of actual interest. He was performing concern for an audience that cared only about the performance, dying, not dead. There's a difference, is there? He'd already lost interest, his attention sliding past her to Adrian. Adrian Zhao. Good to see you. I heard you just closed the Oceanic Development merger. Impressive work, thank you. You should come by the office sometime. I'm launching a new venture capital fund focusing on marine resource extraction. Could use someone with your expertise structuring the offshore components. Marcus said it casually, but his AR display flickered with data, calculations of potential profit, risk assessments, social capital gains from the association, marine resource extraction, Kira repeated. You mean strip mining the ocean floor? Marcus's smile tightened fractionally. I mean accessing valuable minerals necessary for technology production. Sustainable extraction with minimal ecosystem disruption. There's no such thing as minimal disruption when you're literally destroying habitat. There's no such thing as progress without cost, cousin. Marcus turned slightly, angling his body to exclude Kira from the conversation. Adrian, seriously, we should talk. The ROI projections are substantial, I'll consider it. Adrian's voice was neutral, professional, completely devoid of the warmth he'd shown Kira moments before. If you'll excuse us, I need to introduce Kira to a few people. He guided Kira away with a hand at her elbow, light but firm. Marcus watched them go, his expression settling into something calculating. That was diplomatic, Kira said once they were out of earshot. That was self-preservation. Your cousin is the type to hold grudges, and I prefer to maintain professional relationships with grudge holders. Adrian snagged 2 glasses of champagne from a passing drone and handed one to Kira. Though for what it's worth, his marine extraction venture is exactly as environmentally catastrophic as you think it is, but profitable, extremely. That's the problem, isn't it? The most destructive choices are often the most lucrative. Kira sipped the champagne. It tasted like money and missed opportunities. You sound like you have opinions about that. I have a degree in environmental economics and a job that requires me to ignore most of what I learned. It creates interesting cognitive dissonance. He smiled, but there was something bitter in it. I'm very good at helping rich people get richer. I'm less good at sleeping at night. Before Kira could process that admission, a chime resonated through the salon, not sound exactly, but a neural pulse that bypassed ears and went straight to the auditory cortex. Everyone stopped talking simultaneously, their attention pulled toward the raised platform at the room's center. Evelyn Chen had arrived. At 96, she looked 70 at most. The benefits of cellular regeneration therapy and genetic optimization that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. She wore a traditional qipao rendered in smart fabric that rippled with embedded light. Her silver hair styled severely back from a face that had been designed for command. Her neural crown was visible and elaborate, 12 connection points that pulsed with soft blue light, processing power that let her simultaneously monitor a dozen corporate networks while carrying on a conversation. My family. Her voice filled the room, transmitted directly through everyone's neural interfaces with the intimacy of thought. Thank you for gathering. The crowd arranged itself automatically, unconsciously, according to invisible hierarchies that everyone understood but no one acknowledged. Marcus positioned himself front and center, flanked by his siblings and their equally polished spouses. Kira's mother Helena stood in the second tier with Kira's father Thomas, their expressions carefully neutral, their AR displays showing respectable but not impressive social capital scores, 7.3 and 7.1 respectively. Other cousins, aunts, uncles, all slotted into their designated positions like pieces on a board. Kira found herself at the back, naturally. Adrian remained beside her, which was odd. Someone in his position should be closer to power. She filed that observation away. Tonight marks our annual family assessment, Evelyn continued. As you know, the Chin Family Trust undergoes regular restructuring based on individual contribution, growth metrics, and alignment with family values. A holographic display materialized above the platform, three-dimensional and interactive, showing a complex web of financial entities, investment portfolios, and asset distributions. Kira had seen versions of this at every family gathering since she turned 18, watched her name hover in increasingly irrelevant corners while her cousin's allocations grew and multiplied. Her name appeared now, connected to a thin golden line that represented her trust allocation. 50,000 yuan, distributed 8 years ago, untouched since. She'd lived off her university salary and research grants instead, using the inheritance money only once, to fund an emergency rescue operation when her primary coral nursery had been threatened by coastal development. Marcus's line was thick and pulsing with activity, branching into multiple ventures: real estate development, a venture capital fund, an influencer marketing empire. His social capital score glowed at 9.1, impressive and intimidating. Other cousins showed similar patterns of growth and success, their lines expanding like healthy root systems. Some of you have built impressive portfolios, Evelyn said, her voice carrying that particular tone of approval that everyone competed for. You've leveraged your initial investments into substantial returns. You've elevated our family's profile and expanded our sphere of influence. Marcus actually stood straighter, preening. Several people around him nodded, basking in reflected glory. Others, and here Evelyn's gaze swept across the back of the room, landing briefly on Kira, have chosen different paths. The temperature in the salon seemed to drop. Kira felt every eye turn toward her, felt the weight of judgment settle like a physical thing. Her social capital score blinked in the corner of the display, 2.7. The lowest in the family by a significant margin. Kira, darling. Helena's voice cut through the silence, transmitted through the family's private neural channel that allowed communication invisible to outsiders. Please tell me you at least wore the dress I sent you. Kira didn't respond. She'd learned years ago that engaging with her mother's disappointment only fed it. My question tonight, Evelyn continued, is simple. What defines success? What creates lasting value? And who among you truly embodies the principles upon which this family was built? The holographic display shifted, and Kira's stomach dropped. A new metric appeared, one she'd never seen before. Instead of just financial portfolios and social capital scores, it showed something else: impact indices, sustainability ratings, long-term value creation versus short-term profit extraction. The room's energy changed immediately, confusion rippling through the crowd. Marcus's impressive lines suddenly showed red flags: high resource consumption, negative environmental impact, labor practices flagged by ethics algorithms. His marine extraction venture lit up with warnings about ecosystem damage and regulatory risk. Other cousins' ventures revealed similar issues: profit built on exploitation, success measured in extraction rather than creation. And there, in the corner where Kira's thin line had seemed so pathetic moments before, new data blossomed. Hectares of reef restored, over 300 so far. Carbon sequestration rates that put her work among the top 1% of conservation efforts globally. Marine biodiversity indices showing measurable recovery in her project sites. Publication citations numbering in the hundreds, her research methodology being replicated across 17 countries. The ripple effect of her training programs, local communities now sustaining themselves through reef-based ecotourism that would generate income for generations. Her 50,000 yuan investment had somehow generated more measurable positive impact than ventures 1,000 times its size. The silence was absolute. Grandmother, Marcus said, his voice tight but controlled. With all respect, impact metrics don't generate returns. They don't pay dividends. We can't run a family empire on good intentions and coral polyps, can't we? Evelyn's smile was sharp enough to draw blood. Interesting assumption, Marcus. Tell me, what's the current status of your venture capital fund? Marcus hesitated, just barely, but everyone caught it. We're projecting 18% annual returns over the next 5-year period, with, you're projecting. Your actual returns for the past 3 years have been negative 4.2%. Your fund survives on family capital injections and accounting practices that skirt the edge of legality. She turned to another cousin. Jennifer, your influencer marketing empire. What happens when the algorithms change? When your audience demographic shifts? When the next platform emerges, Jennifer's bioluminescent skin modification, a 40,000 yuan procedure that made her glow softly in dim light, flickered with stress response. We're diversifying into nothing sustainable. Nothing with lasting value. You've built castles on sand and convinced yourselves you're architects. Evelyn's voice wasn't cruel, exactly, but it was utterly uncompromising. Meanwhile, Kira's work will outlive us all. Those restored reefs will support ecosystems for centuries. Her research has fundamentally changed how we approach marine conservation. She's created something that can't be bought, sold, or destroyed by market fluctuations. Kira's heart was hammering. This couldn't be happening. This kind of recognition didn't happen to people like her, however. Evelyn's voice softened, and Kira's brief moment of vindication evaporated. Noble work means nothing if it leaves you starving. Principled poverty is still poverty. Kira, what was your income last year? The question landed like a weapon. Everyone could access her financial data through their AR displays. Privacy was largely fictional in their world, but having it stated aloud was different. It was exposure, humiliation, the quiet part said loud. 42,000 yuan, Kira said. Before research expenses, you live in a 60 square meter apartment in the university district. You eat synthesized protein 4 days a week to afford equipment. You haven't purchased new clothing in 2 years. Evelyn's expression was unreadable. Why? Because the work is more important than comfort. Is it? Or is it because you've convinced yourself that suffering validates your choices? That poverty makes you morally superior to the rest of us? The question hit like a punch. Kira felt Adrian's presence beside her, felt him watching her response. I don't think I'm morally superior, Kira said carefully. I simply prioritize differently. You martyr yourself. Helena's voice cracked through the private channel, unable to contain herself any longer. She switched to public broadcast, her frustration overriding discretion. You always have. It's performative, Kira. This whole noble scientist living in poverty act. You make the rest of us feel guilty for having ambition, for wanting success, for not living like graduate students our entire lives. I never asked you to feel guilty, you don't have to ask. You perform it every time you show up in that blazer, every time you refuse gifts, every time you make yourself small to make your choices seem large. Helena's voice carried that particular tone of maternal disappointment that could flay skin. You've made poverty your identity. Your brand. And now look, grandmother validates it, and you think you've won something. The salon was silent. Every eye on her, every AR display probably recording this for later analysis, later gossip. Kira felt something crack inside her chest, not heartbreak. She'd stopped breaking over her mother's opinions years ago, but something else. Recognition of truth in the cruelty. She had made poverty a badge of honor. She had convinced herself that struggling validated her work, that comfort would corrupt her principles. She'd turned sacrifice into identity, perhaps, Evelyn said quietly, and her voice was gentle now, almost kind. Both things can be true. Your work has value, Kira. Immense value. And you've been punishing yourself for choosing it over profit. These are not mutually exclusive realities. Kira couldn't speak. Her throat had closed, which brings me to tonight's announcement. Evelyn's voice strengthened, addressing the full room again. I'm restructuring the trust. New metrics. New allocations. New priorities. The holographic display shifted, showing revised distributions. Marcus's allocation had contracted to a third of its previous size. Other cousins showed similar reductions, their thick lines thinning, their portfolios marked with caution flags and performance requirements. And Kira's line had expanded into something incomprehensible. Numbers with too many zeros. Investment portfolios she didn't understand. Asset allocations that made no sense. Access to family resources she'd never imagined touching. Kira will receive an operational capital allocation of 6 million yuan annually for the next decade to expand her research infrastructure. She'll have full access to the family's private research facilities, equipment, and vessel fleet. She will direct the Chen Foundation's new marine restoration initiative with a 300 million yuan endowment and complete autonomy over its deployment. The room erupted. Marcus was shouting, his carefully maintained composure shattering. Helena looked like she might faint. Jennifer's bioluminescent skin was strobing with stress. Other family members talked over each other, their voices creating cacophony even through the neural channels. Kira couldn't breathe. Adrian leaned close, his voice cutting through the chaos. Breathe. You're not breathing. She pulled an air, felt the world tilt, steadied herself against nothing. This is insane, Marcus was saying, his voice cutting through the noise. She's done nothing to earn this. Nothing. We've built businesses, created jobs, expanded the family's influence. You've extracted value and called it creation, Evelyn said. You've built empires on exploitation and convinced yourselves it was genius. I'm done enabling it, so you're rewarding failure instead? Jennifer's voice was shrill. Rewarding poverty and self-righteousness? I'm investing in the future. In work that matters. In principles that outlast profit margins. Evelyn's voice was steel. If you can't understand the difference, then you've failed the only test that matters. Kira's mind was racing, spiraling. This was too much. Too visible. Too vulnerable. She'd survived family gatherings by being invisible, by asking nothing, by expecting nothing. Now she was the center of everything, and every eye that had dismissed her was burning with resentment or calculation or both. She turned and walked, not caring if it looked like retreat. Needing desperately to be anywhere but in that room with those eyes and that attention, she made it to one of the penthouse's observation decks before her hands started shaking. The city sprawled below, endless layers of light and commerce, algorithms running the world while people pretended they were still in control. Somewhere down there was her lab, her research stations, the quiet work that made sense. That was quite a performance. Adrian had followed her. Of course he had. Kira turned to tell him she wanted to be alone, but the words died when she saw his expression. He wasn't looking at her with pity or calculation. He looked impressed. Maybe even awed. I didn't ask for any of that. Kira said, I know. That's exactly why she gave it to you. Everyone in there hates me now. They hated you before. Now they have to take you seriously while they do it. He moved to stand beside her at the railing, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Your grandmother has been planning this for 2 years. I helped structure the financial instruments. I've been evaluating you. The admission hit like cold water. So you knew. You knew all along what was going to happen tonight. I knew the framework. I didn't know you. He turned to face her fully. Reading someone's research doesn't tell you how they'll handle sudden visibility. Or power. Or family resentment. And how am I handling it? You ran away to process privately instead of performing emotions for an audience. You're either very smart or very avoidant, both. Definitely both. His smile was genuine, reaching his eyes. Good answer. They stood in silence for a moment. Inside, the gala continued, voices raised in argument or negotiation or damage control. Kira could feel the neural notifications piling up, messages from family members, requests for meetings, questions she had no answers for. What happens now? She asked. Now you decide what kind of power you want to wield. Adrian's voice was quiet, serious. Your grandmother gave you resources. What you do with them determines whether this is a gift or a burden. I don't want power. I want to restore coral reefs, those aren't mutually exclusive. He pulled something from his pocket, an actual physical card, rare and deliberately old-fashioned. My direct contact. No corporate filters, no family oversight. If you want help navigating this, or if you just want someone to talk to who isn't trying to manipulate you into something, use it. Kira took the card, felt the weight of actual paper. Why would you help me? Because I think you're about to do something remarkable. He paused. Also because your research has implications for a project I'm developing, and I'd like to collaborate. But mostly the first thing. What project? Underwater agricultural systems. Closed-loop protein production that doesn't require land or fresh water or pesticides. Your coral work suggests methods for creating sustainable marine ecosystems that could support large-scale food production while simultaneously rebuilding ocean health. His expression animated, genuine enthusiasm breaking through professional composure. We could feed billions while restoring what we've destroyed. But I need someone who understands the biology. Someone who thinks in systems, not just profit margins. Something sparked in Kira's chest. Not attraction, or not only attraction, but recognition. The way a scientist feels when someone else sees the connections others miss, understands the potential beyond the immediate application. That's ambitious, she said, so is restoring the world's coral reefs on a university salary and spite. Fair point, I should go back, Kira said, though she didn't move. Face the aftermath, you should. Adrian leaned against the railing, his shoulder nearly touching hers. But first, advice. Your family is going to try to tear you down. They'll question your competence, your motives, your right to these resources. Don't defend yourself. Don't justify. Just do the work and let results speak. That's what I've always done, I know. Keep doing it. But now you'll have an audience, and that changes everything. He straightened. Ready? She wasn't. But she nodded anyway. They walked back into the salon together, and Kira felt every eye track their movement. Adrian Zhao, financial architect and apparently her grandmother's trusted operative, walking beside Kira Chen, former family embarrassment and sudden heir to substantial resources. The implications would be calculated and recalculated by every person in the room. Marcus intercepted them immediately. His expression had settled into something that might have been a smile if smiles could cut. Congratulations, cousin. Quite a windfall, thank you. I hope you understand what comes with it. Resources require oversight. Accountability. Regular reporting to the family board. Proof of effective capital deployment and measurable returns. His AR display flickered with data, already calculating angles of attack. I'm sure Kira will provide whatever documentation is required, Adrian said smoothly. As the foundation's primary financial architect, I'll be ensuring full transparency and regulatory compliance." Something cold flashed in Marcus's eyes. "Of course. I look forward to reviewing the preliminary budget allocations. I assume those will be available within the week, 2 weeks," Kira said, pulling the timeline from nowhere. "I need to assess current projects and identify optimal expansion opportunities." 2 weeks. Reasonable. Marcus leaned closer, voice dropping below neural broadcast range. "Enjoy your moment, Kira. But remember, family money comes with family strings. And some of us are very good at pulling them." He walked away, leaving threat hanging in the air like expensive cologne. "He's going to make this difficult," Kira said. "He's going to try." Adrian's voice was unworried. "Let him. You have something he doesn't. What? Actual work to do. While he's plotting to undermine you, you'll be too busy accomplishing things to notice." Kira looked at him, really looked this time, and saw someone who'd positioned himself deliberately in her corner. She didn't trust him. Couldn't trust him. But something in her wanted to. "I should find my grandmother," she said. "Thank her. Or ask her what she's thinking. Or maybe just confirm this isn't an elaborate hallucination." Probably all three. Adrian's smile was warm. "For what it's worth, I really do think you're about to change things. Or collapse spectacularly under pressure I never asked for, that too. Either way, it'll be interesting to watch." Before Kira could respond, her neural interface chimed with a direct message from Evelyn. "Private office. Now." Alone, the warmth of the moment evaporated. "I'm being summoned. Good luck, I'm going to need it." She left him there and walked through crowds that parted differently now, not quite deference, but awareness that she wasn't invisible anymore. She was a player, a threat, someone worth calculating around. The walk to Evelyn's private office felt like walking toward execution. What now? What additional revelation, what impossible expectation, what test she'd inevitably fail? She reached the door and placed her palm on the biometric scanner. It read her genetics, her heart rate, probably her stress hormones. The lock disengaged. Evelyn sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of reclaimed coral limestone, dead reef turned into furniture, which felt deeply ironic. Without the performance required for the public gala, she looked older. Tired. Human. "Close the door, darling." Kira did. Stood before the desk like a student called to account. "Sit. You're not in trouble." Kira sat on the edge of an uncomfortable chair that was probably designed to keep visitors off balance. "Then why do I feel like I am?" "Because you're intelligent enough to know that gifts this size come with expectations." Evelyn leaned back, studying her. "I owe you an explanation." "You don't owe me anything, I do. Tonight was brutal, and you deserved warning." Evelyn's hands rested on the desk, and Kira noticed for the first time how thin they'd become, how the age-defying treatments couldn't quite hide the frailty underneath. "I've been watching you for 8 years. Since you took your inheritance and immediately invested it in coral instead of yourself. Since you chose that apartment and synthesized protein over comfort. Since you published work that nobody in this family bothered to read because it didn't generate immediate profit." They don't care about coral, they don't care about anything that doesn't immediately benefit them. But you, something that might have been regret crossed Evelyn's face. You inherited the best parts of this family. The parts one tried to build before money corrupted everything. Kira didn't know what to say to that. "I'm dying," Evelyn said simply. "Real dying, not the kind that money and technology can fix. 8 months, maybe 10. And I needed to know this family would mean something after I'm gone." The observation deck tilted. Kira gripped the chair arms. "Grandmother, don't. Don't make sympathetic noises or offer empty comfort. I've had 96 years, most of them good. I'm not afraid of ending. Evelyn's gaze was steady, unflinching. But I am afraid of leaving behind nothing but parasites. So I'm gambling everything on you.